Hey, District 2 sports fans, it's Gregory here, and I want to tell you about our new sponsorship here. If you're looking to make your business stand out, you've got to check out Chaos Cartel Company. They specialize in custom shirts, hats, tumblers, banners, and so much more. And the best part, there's no minimum order, and their pricing is amazing. I should know because we have a few shirts from them. Whether you're a small business or just looking to get some cool merch, Chaos Cartel Company is here to help. They love working with other businesses to bring your brand to life. If you want to get started, give them a call at 434 489 6123 or shoot them an email at chaoscartel1, and that's the number one, at gmail.com. Chaos Cartel Company, making your business look good, one custom piece at a time.
You are now listening to the District 2 Sports Podcast, available on all your favorite music apps. Like and subscribe.
Welcome back, sports fans, to the District 2 Sports Podcast. We have a real treat for you today. It is an absolute honor and a pleasure for us to host the two-time now national champion women's basketball D3, Meg Barber from the New York University Violets. Coach, thank you for taking this opportunity to be with us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be with you guys. Or should I say y'all? Should I just...
There you go. Perfect. You fit right in now. Is it you guys up there or what? How is it?
I get a little y'all in here and there,
okay.
but I think I'm pretty inconsistent.
All right. So I told them I was going to get controversial right off the get-go. Okay.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So I'm going to put you in. So I just got from my latest cohorts here that now you have gone through all of your enemies and all the teams on D3 that you will now be playing a D1 schedule next year, and y'all playing home and home against Seton Hall, home and home against St. John's next year. So congratulations, Coach.
Yeah, that wasn't supposed to leak out yet. I don't know how you got that info.
And before we go any further, I learned something on the broadcast from the national championship game that I believe you have some new news about your did you go from single life to?
Yep.
Okay, so
just got married about, let me look, like almost 2 weeks ago, not quite 2 weeks ago tomorrow.
Well, congratulations. And I know I bugged the absolute crap out of you for 2 weeks, and I thought about it. I thought about it before I saw the replay of the game, and then I said, oh, she's on a tour. She's on her out enjoying her wedding and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like, man, I'm so sorry. So I did bug her, guys. So I apologize.
That's why I'm here. It was worth it.
That's right.
Well, coach, my first question is always kind of about your background to give our fans a little bit more depth about yourself. I know you played at NYU, you're alum there, but kind of before that, how did you get into the game of basketball?
Yeah, my dad was my first coach, and he actually started, we had boys programs. I grew up in a really, really small town up in upstate New York, Hoosick Falls, New York, shout out. And he was coaching my sister in a 5th and 6th grade team. She was in 6th grade, and he started the first girls team in the town. And I just sort of tagged along, and he would give me, whatever gym time we had left over at the end of practice, he would, help me with ball handling and just learning how to shoot underhand and all that kind of fun stuff. So, he just really put the ball in my hands for the first time. And honestly, it was kind of love at first sight and first sound and first smell. I mean, all the things that, as a little kid, you're just so excited about the game. And I actually grew up a Duke fan. I don't know who that's going to offend. Yeah. So I grew up near Albany, New York, and people think, oh, you must be like, Syracuse and things like that. But there's really not a lot of, more of the on TV D1 programs, in that area. So Duke was just on all the time. And, I just grew up watching their men play. I mean, following all their teams, and, was just really fortunate that he was willing to kind of put that time in on the weekends, and I got a great start in playing.
Well, I got to ask you. So you're in high school, how you get recruited by several different New York schools, probably all around the Northeast. But what led you to NYU? Like, was it the big city life, or what was it about NYU that let you there?
No, it's funny because like my number one, I mean, outside of I wanted a great academic opportunity, and I wanted to play in a competitive program. Just that's my nature. Like I didn't want to go someplace and not have a chance to compete to win. And back then, I mean, it was just there's no social media. I'm dating myself, but there's no even really like computer research. It was whatever I got in the mail from coaches is was my research. So NYU's packet came. It was kind of the biggest, the best, personalized notes and things of that nature. I thought it was a Division I school. And I got talking and I was going on some D1 visits. And then when I got ready to go to NYU's visit, I was just trying to compare with their coaching staff, like how did you do against Columbia? How did you do against University of Vermont, Holy Cross? And they were like, "Oh, we don't play those schools." And that was the first time I even knew that there was like really honestly like a difference of divisions because just like watching TV, women's basketball wasn't even on TV. So you heard about, the LSUs and the Tennessees and barely a little bit. We were starting to get into UConn culture. And so basically, I said to my dad, I don't want to go to a Division III school. And he said, well, we should just go on the visit. The coaches have been great. Like, we have the visit planned. We should just still take the visit. So I took the visit and I was walking across Washington Square Park, which is kind of NYU's unofficial quad. And it just like that it feeling that, I talk about even with recruits now and some of my friends who were getting recruited had talked about their visits. I just felt it. And I kind of turned to him. I was like, I think this might be where I want to go. And he turned like white as a ghost. There was no part of him that not only wanted to pay for college, but thought that, from one blinking stoplight that I was going to go to New York City. So he was really surprised, I think, just based on kind of some of the other schools I was looking at, but he supported it. And, I was really fortunate to be kind of the last sibling coming through that it was a financial decision that, my family was able to make, and kind of the rest is history.
Well, you went
Gregory,
from oh,
I was going to say Gregory and Devin, she's not bragging whatsoever, but can't she though? I mean, look at this. We talked about this earlier, Gregory. 10th on the all-time scoring list there at 1,228 points, captain during her senior year, two-time All UAA, first team All ECAC, second team D3 Hoops All Region, two times in the Elite Eight, number one ranked for the year of 2000, 2001, and a 93 and 18 career record there. I mean, come on, coach.
Well, I've tried to be a better coach than I was a player, so that's the part that I'm so excited to be winning at.
Well, your record speaks for itself, that's for sure. No doubt about that. Um, so, kind of skipping around a little bit and getting to the what I witnessed as a thrashing at the national championship, and I don't know how else to even say it, and I apologized to Smith, but that's the only way I can explain it. I mean, and these two kids of mine weren't at the game, but you know, we talked about this in the press conference, Coach, and it was 11-0 in the first 2 minutes, basically, and I felt like they saw, they were deer in the headlights, and y'all's length, y'all's physicality, your speed just absolutely destroyed them. And well, the question I was going to ask you, did it help to play them last year in the championship game? And how much, in me not seeing a game or not knowing, exactly what happened in last year's finals, besides you guys winning, did you make any adjustments between last year and this year?
That's a great question. Certainly playing in the national championship, regardless of who we played, was, the penultimate experience the year before. And having won it, I will tell you that I still to this day have not fully watched that game back because it was probably our ugliest game of the year. I mean, we had our All-American center was like bringing the ball down the floor, dribbling between her legs, shooting pull-up jumpers. I was like, what is literally happening? From a team that was known, so much for our offensive efficiency. We were just out of our minds a little bit, and trying to play a transition game against a team that was really packing it in and sort of taking that away from us. And so I definitely learned, from that experience of that the one thing you can count on is your players are going to have some nerves in that game. And usually that's going to affect the offensive side of the ball. The good thing was the year before we held them to 41 points. So we won by 10, but we're up by over 20% of their score in a way. So, this year I will say to the 11-0 run to start the game, there's a picture of me like screaming, kind of intensely, and it really kind of summed up how I felt. I was just so excited for our players to be playing the type of basketball that they knew how to play in that game, because the year before it was like we started pretty well, but we never got like a real flow. And when the ball was tipped, the way that Bruns won the tip and the way we went down and just scored a bucket like that, honestly, I was like, if we play the way we can play, we have this. And it was just so neat to see our players play really to the best of their ability on the biggest stage, a year after they kind of played one of their worst games on that stage. And to your point, we completely redid our offense this year. We didn't have a real true back to the basket low post presence. We played more of a 4-out with a high post step out into a 5-out offense. So there was a lot more reading and cutting, and I think a better use of our athleticism this year that, again, knowing if we were just willing to share the ball, that it would be really hard for teams that weren't as athletic as us to defend. And I think it really showcased. I mean, we put up 77 points in that game, which, like I said, the year before we put up 51. So it was quite a different game.
Well, what I was also going to ask you, the B part of that question was, you know, I guess the only way to really truly say this is, did you have any fear, anything come over top of you that said, we truly have not been tested this year? I mean, the closest game you had this year was February 9th against Washington University, which was 77-58. So did anything kind of creep in and say, if this thing gets to be a nail biter, how are we going to react, or anything to that effect?
Yeah, well, we did situations all year, and I had a really tremendous second group. We also had a tremendous kind of scout team that, I tell people like our second group probably would have finished like top five in our league. They're really, really talented group of players. And so, even for situations, and what helped is that they knew this, a lot of times they knew the set I was going to run when I would do timeout advance at the end of practice. And so they knew how to defend it, but it was, forcing our players to make the right reads. And so we worked on it a lot. I'm psyched as a coach that I never had to actually use them. This year, the players joked for all the time we spent on time score. We literally never once. I tried to get one of our seniors a three at the end of the Smith game. We ran one of those sets. But we called it new math. So to your point, like honestly for us this year, strangely enough, if we were up 28 and the team went on like a 4-0, 6-0 run, and all of a sudden it was a 21, 22 point game, it felt sort of close because we were used to being up by like 35 or 40. So in its own way, I think we still had like those moments and those runs that we had to snuff out and things of that nature. But in the back of my mind, I think I was wondering, what will this be like if we're actually in this situation? But we had a very veteran group, so that eased my mind in a lot of ways.
Well, the other thing I was going to mention was, I'm not even going to pretend like I know everything as far as, the strategies and play calling and stuff like that. But, I noticed in the basically first 8 minutes of the game, a lot of back screens, a lot of pick downs. I mean, it was almost like the old Princeton, backdoor offense. I mean, it was beautiful basketball. And I think you made mention of something in the press conference, whereas, we ran some of this and people were sitting there going, where's she at? Where's she at? And then all of a sudden you got a wide open layup, highest percentage shot. And also, I know that there was a guy from District 2 Sports Podcast there that asked a question that, noticed that, you guys averaged 21 assists per game and you only had 20 for the championship game, but all five starters were in double figures. So if you could just speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah,
I
that
know
that
you, I
guy
know you were mad about that. I know you just
that
had to be
that guy
cringy.
asked a great question in that press conference. So, We talk about it all year as passing up a good shot for a great shot. And, the offense that we ran this year, actually, we'd been running in practice as a secondary offense for the previous 3 years. And because we were so dominant in the low post, we didn't really utilize it a whole lot. We needed to make some substitutions. And then when we did, we would maybe be running it for like 2 to 3 minutes max. So this was the first year that we really kind of opened things up and allowed the team to make those reads. I mean, my assistant coaches do such an incredible job scouting. So we kind of knew how they were going to guard us on some screens. To your point, we knew they were going to chase some shooters. And so we set up a few, initial play calls just to curl them off on a chase, just to curl them to the rim. And know that, again, Natalie Bruns at the high post is not going to force a shot when she has somebody cutting to the rim, that's wide open for a layup. And then a lot of the other sets were just, our players making reads off of stuff they're used to seeing all year. We had in the UAA, we're kind of in like the Power Five of Division III in a way. We saw so many different defensive looks, whether it was sagging or, full deny, face guard, zone. And, our players were kind of used to that. So I think they just made some really, really great reads. And again, it comes down to having a willing passer, to your point on 20 assists. I mean, that's a tremendous number in a championship game where I think when you look at kind of the direction the game has gone, it's a lot of one-on-one, a lot of ISO, a lot of ball screen reads. And we had a lot more cutting, set a great screen so that you're actually more open than the cutter themselves. And, our players just really bought into it, which was really fun to coach this year.
Well, I'll let them have a question in a second. I'm just going to dominate this thing. So, you're now 62-0 in the last 2 seasons, and if I'm not mistaken, you're gonna lose Natalie, and
Yeah.
you're gonna lose Bill. So, I know Bill was the player, the most valuable player of the tournament, and
Yeah.
then Natalie, and I need to give them a congratulations as well because I just learned that Natalie was first team academic All-American, and I think Bill was second team. So congratulations to both of them. But how much? And I know, some people say, "Hey, this is not rebuilding, this is reloading," and I kind of get that feeling from you. But
Yeah.
how much are you going to lose that senior leadership?
I honestly, just like personally, I love those guys so much. I mean, you're talking about the players we recruited when we were, first of all, we recruited Bronze in her rookie year was the pandemic in New York City. So she literally did not play a game. And then we recruited Belle during the pandemic. So she literally like barely saw campus, couldn't go into any buildings, couldn't see. So when you talk about like blind trust and faith and, like a belief in what we're talking about, those are the guys that did it before we were 62-0, before we had, multiple national championships. So they just mean so much to me, and they've gone about this whole process of like building culture and being great leaders with sort of a chip on their shoulder. Their first 2 years we lost in the Elite Eight, both times on the road. We lost at Hope, we lost at Transylvania. And, in I wouldn't say 2 games that we really could have moved on from, but had we moved on from them, we probably would have had another national championship. And they kind of learned like what it took to be in the Final Four, which is where you want to be. But they've gone about it in a way. I mean, obviously they've crushed the statistical record books here. They're going to be two of the best players to ever wear an NYU uniform. I don't think there's an award Bruns hasn't won yet. I mean, she just won the Jostens Award, which includes, the highest levels of community impact on NYU's campus. So they're just really well-rounded people, and that's the part that's going to be the hardest to replace is just, when I stand in front of the board before in our pregame talk, I'm staring right at the Bell and Brun sat next to each other, right at the end of the lockers and with everybody else on the sides. And to just look down and know that I had those two taking the court to start the game. I mean, there's no better security as a coach. So I'm going to miss it. But like you said, they've instilled a tremendous work ethic and culture that, the players coming up behind them are really striving to make sure they fill those shoes.
Well, I'm gonna tell you one last thing, and I'll let them ask a question. But the thing I noticed about your team is, you know, they're gals on the court. I mean, they're having fun, they're playing ball, but the thing I noticed in the press conference was they're women in the press conference. I mean, they are so mature. I mean, wasn't a lot of giggly stuff. They are to the point, and I was very impressed with you and your girls.
Thank you.
Well, Coach, I was looking at your year by year record. Your first year there, you were at 17 and 10, and of course, now you've won 62 straight. But it kind of mimicked your career as an assistant coach as well. I mean, you started off at William and Mary. I think it said that you guys were like 5 and 24, maybe the year before, the year you got there, and then you kind of turned around to 20 win seasons there, and kind of same thing at Temple, where your last 2 years, I think you were 20 win seasons, and you're in the WNIT. What's been the recipes for success, and what lessons did you learn from those assistant roles?
Oh man. Well, number one, I think I was just in tremendous situations for myself, and they weren't always comfortable. And I think that's a big thing, like assistants, younger assistants looking to get into the game. You kind of have to put yourself in those uncomfortable situations so that you can grow, and I played Division 3. My first job was Division 3. So my William and Mary years, that was my first taste of D1. And I know, my boss at the time, who is a dear friend of mine, Deb Taylor, she was kind of like, well, how is it going to translate coaching Division 3 to coaching Division 1? And I was sort of like, are you kidding me? I get to just actually hand a scholarship to somebody versus like trying to, work the admissions and financial aid puzzle. So, I think sometimes people try to compare divisions and overlook, like, at the end of the day, the job of coaching and connecting with young people is college athletics. You're mentoring, you're pushing them, but they really have to buy in. And I try to build those relationships authentically in recruiting. And I was a recruiting coordinator at William and Mary, and so just getting the right people in the door is always, I think, the biggest key, because if you can build a great culture, even when you're on a 2 or 3 game slide, it's not going to end your season. You're going to have an ability to overcome that. And same thing going to Temple. I was at Temple in a really interesting time. I joined that staff. We were in the Big East. I think I was sitting at my desk the second day on the job when the Big East decided we're not doing this whole football back and forth. And so then literally I was recruiting with no league. Like we would call kids and they're like, well, what league are you in? And we were like, we don't know yet. And then obviously the American Athletic Conference formed, but we had UConn in our conference, we had Louisville, we had Rutgers. We were putting our hand in our huddle, like, let's finish second, really, because like UConn was just Brianna Stewart years, Steph Dolson years. I mean, I think they won actually 111 straight games, I think. So I've been on the other side of coaching, against that, to kind of be in the position where I am now. But I think it's been a really great growth opportunity to even just, have to do a scout for UConn and prepare for that. And you learn a lot about what it takes to be successful at the highest level, because, there's always that mantra, how you do anything is how you do everything. But truly for UConn, that's the exact recipe. They are sharp with everything. I mean, you watch them warm up and we're like, can we have one player warm up like that? They just, everything they do is machine like. And I've tried to take some of those lessons, to our team at NYU and in our own way, and kind of make it ours, but also know what excellence really looks like.
Coach, looking back at your first year from today, I mean, did you think possibly they were going to come after your head 17 and 10 and, 6 and 8 in conference? And, but you do win the what was it, ECA
ECAC, yeah.
championship, correct?
Yeah, that was like our national championship that year. It's kind of like the WNIT for D3 up here. It was shocking. I will tell you that because my current boss was also my coach. And so she is still to this day kind of obviously my biggest supporter, having brought me to NYU now twice. But also, she still kind of is like a coach in her own right. And she was like, listen, you're probably going to have single digit wins. Like, that's what you have in this cupboard. And just grind it out and focus on recruiting and see what you can come up with. And so 17 wins that year was like incredible. I mean, we would kind of joke as a staff. We just really tried to push a lot of belief into our players that they could do it. And that was our sole focus, is keep practice positive and give them a belief that they clearly didn't have in themselves. And lo and behold, we had a player in that championship game in the ECAC score 42 points. And her whole freshman career, she had like 39 points in her whole freshman season. So I think that kind of buy-in, and they were excited to be coached. So yeah, I look back really fondly. They were actually one of my favorite teams to coach here because there was just no expectation, and they just, wanted to get whatever they could out of that year.
Well,
Well,
Coach,
Coach,
oh, go ahead, Evan.
to say that your 2024 and 2025 years were successful would be a massive understatement with two national championships, of course, at NYU, but also during that time, you take on the job at with the Team USA U17 women's basketball team and win gold on an international level. So, can you just talk about what that whole process is like with regards to like the interviewing process with USA Basketball, and then what went into the decision to take the job, and then of course the experience that you gathered along the way.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's a tremendous, tremendous honor. I mean, I can still picture what it felt like when the gold medal game was starting and they're playing the national anthems of Canada and the US. I mean, the whole dynamic, the arena being, filled with screaming fans, and you're wearing USA across your chest. I mean, it's one of the coolest life experiences I've had. And I was really surprised to get the call. There is no interview process. They make their selections, and I don't know if I was option one, two, three. I have no idea. When they call, I was obviously thrilled to take the call. I didn't understand why they were calling. I was like, "What do you need to use our gym? Like, what's happening?" And I was selected to go work at one of the mini camps, which was out in Portland during the D1 Final Four, or D1, I guess it was like the Elite Eight stage. And then they called me back and asked if I would, head coach the team essentially. So it was a lot of getting up to speed. And I think what I really credit for winning gold is I had access to Tara Vanderveer. I had, people were reaching out like, how can we help you? Which is such a cool thing about USA Basketball is everybody who's been a part of it just wants a team to be successful. And Sue Phillips out at Archbishop Mitty. I mean, there were just people that were willing to give me their time to talk about how you possibly get a team ready to play the world, which is any style you can imagine, 5 out, high-low ball screens, and how you can get a group of real individuals from around the country who have not had these years of playing together to come together for like 11 days and be ready to kind of take on the world. So it was a really big job, but I really grew a lot as a coach. And, like I said, I look back on it really, really fondly.
Coach, last one for me. I was looking at your roster here, and you have kids from Virginia, Australia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana. I mean, obviously, NYU sells itself on the academic, level, but you still have to recruit these kids, and you don't have any scholarships on a D3 level. So what's the recruiting pitch, and how you been so successful getting them to come to NYC, which is not for everybody,
It's
especially.
not, yeah. It's not, but I think at the same time, it's like we tell people you could take as big or as small a bite out of the Big Apple that you want to. Like my freshman year on campus, I don't think I rode the subway once. I was like, I came here to be a student and to go to the gym. If you couldn't find me because we didn't have cell phones, I was in the gym. And so I think and then I have other players that grew up like commuting to the city, going to Broadway shows, so we have a plethora of, I think, even like experienced New Yorkers on our team. But we're able, like you said, we're very fortunate that we can cast a wide net, and we do not have a lack of interest in terms of people coming to play for us. I think the biggest issue we come into is like trying to identify who would be the best fit, while we're waiting out kind of the Division I IV and that whole process, like trying to really just formulate the best roster that we can find, to put ourselves in the position that we have been. And then obviously, the last few years we've had some graduate students that, with this extra year of COVID and, now players, a lot of times at the D1 level, they're done in 3 years, because of summer, the required summer school and things like that. So NYU just has honestly an unlimited number of grad programs. So there's no one that has called that we've said, oh, we don't have that. I think again, the bigger issue is we'll get called and people will say, well, I didn't really play, but I was on a Division I roster. And a lot of times it's like we actually have players in our program. A lot of them had D1 offers and they maybe weren't the best fit for them either personally or academically. And so, we're not like, oh, you played D1, come join us. It's again, just making sure we really have the right people first and, trying to work on the team and their skill set and things like that after.
Coach, I know we got to get you out of here in just a few moments, so I've got a conglomerate of questions that I'm going to ask at one time, and you can answer them as you please. Um, First question is about just the school, I guess directly is there anything in the future for NYU to maybe move up in classes or whatever, divisions? I know that there's, I guess, over 61,000 students in the programs. Second of all, with all of your degrees and educations, how long is it going to be before you're the general manager over what I guess is probably, well, you're probably about 2.5 miles from MSG. So when will you take over the next GM position? And then last, how many times have you crossed campus with both of your trophies under your arm and kind of flaunted them? Because I know, the funny thing was on that weekend y'all played for the national championship. The men were playing for the national championship, and you had a swimming and diving team competing for a
Yeah.
national championship. So I'm
Yeah.
just kind of curious if you might just run those trophies by everybody every once in a while.
I haven't flexed that yet. We do have like massive balloons still up in our offices that the men have to look at. I feel bad sometimes, but we share a practice court right next to them. We're both side by side, so it was like such a fun year. And the fact that they made the national championship was obviously incredible. We were out on the court with the streamers falling, and our players were asking about how the men did, which was, just shows the camaraderie between the two teams. I haven't done that flex yet, holding both, but I might. That you give me some good
Excellent
ideas there.
opportunity.
Yeah. The New York Liberty CEO is actually an NYU grad,
Wow.
Kia Clark. So we've been in touch quite a bit. She sent a great message to the team after. So maybe when she's done, I'll look to slide into those shoes. What was the first question?
Uh, that was about does NYU have anything in the
Oh,
future as far as moving up in divisions or anything to that
yeah.
effect so that you
Yeah.
can offer scholarships or anything to that effect?
I mean, if we did that, I think it would be like a destination, legit, like nothing, I mean, we're in like kind of that Stanford category, the state of college athletics is so in flux. I think it'll be really interesting to see like what happens next because I don't even know what we will call divisions down the line, but we're certainly in a position where we'll be a part of the future. But we haven't really had the D1 talks. A lot of people, I sat in our Stern Business School. They invited me to class and I was talking to the students and they all wanted to talk about us going Division I. And I was telling them like, listen, there's pros and cons of all of this, and we're really in a have versus have not category. We're really in the lead of the haves, and it's a really cool place to be right now. But what the future is, we'll have to wait and see because NYU does not, we don't dip our toe in. We're like full in, and we're doing things to the best. I mean, Spike Lee has reached out a few times to come meet with our
Wow,
team. He's a professor on campus for our art school.
no
That's the
kidding.
kind of stuff that's happening. So if they decide to do it, I'm sure it will be really, really well thought out. It won't be like a knee-jerk reaction to kind of, you know, the Patriot League gave us an invite, something like that.
Well, last thing, I just wanted to comment on the NYU followers, and these two weren't at the game, but you guys did not have to wait what 30 minutes and y'all were already partying because your fans that traveled had a party set up for you guys as soon as the game was over. So I thought, how tremendous was that? Not only did they know you were going to win, but they had already set up a party. But I think that
I think they were partying before the game even started. That's our fan group. I don't want to call out our parents. I heard Dawn Staley say in one of her press conferences that one of the MVPs of their season were the senior parents who sort of taught the other parents how to be parents of a championship contending team because you have players that come in, like you said, international, I mean, across the board that are used to being the star. And so to take like a backup role and to be able to sit there in the stands and really cheer for the team, that's what we preach all the time it was so cool to look across. I mean, we had people in like troll hats and they just brought such a vibe to that environment. And obviously Smith did too. They had an incredible
they
group of
did.
fans, but obviously the way the game went, I mean, they were really pretty silent. So the vibe in the gym was definitely NYU leaning, but our administration also I have to shout out because they like literally to your point reserved space on campus for us to have a gathering, and whether or not it was going to be celebratory, maybe we didn't know, but it definitely turned into a party, and it's so cool to be able to share your successes with your community. And that's always been one of my biggest things. It's not about us. It's like, how can we, and we had two buses of students from campus come down, which, they were all at the after game celebration as well, taking pictures with the trophy and things like that. So really, really cool moment that I won't forget.
Well, Coach, we know you have a meeting to get to, and we cannot thank you enough. And I'm just going to go ahead and ask you right now, if we could schedule you up some more time, maybe before the season starts or sometime right after the season starts next year, and talk about, yeah, that team and what's coming to NYU. And then the other thing is we're going to go ahead and offer you guys a free rendition of the District 2 Sports Podcast play-by-play game. And, we'll pay our expenses to get on the train and come up and do the play-by-play for a game, okay?
I love that. Let's make that happen. Let's make that happen.
Absolutely.
For any of your
Absolutely.
listeners out there, if they have follow up, my email's online, feel free to reach out. I got a lot of cool feedback just because our game was on ESPN. So many people watch it that I think normally wouldn't have been able to kind of catch the game. And a lot of people have reached out asking about our offense, our defense, things like that. But if people have questions, feel free to reach out. I'm an open book. Our players do the work. It's easy to tell people what we do. I think it's harder to have the players that can do it. But I'm just really genuinely happy to get opportunities like this to even connect with people. You guys have been great. Devin and Greg, maybe you'll have some more airtime next time, but
I
So,
dominated.
hopefully
Hey,
so.
and listen, if anybody out there is interested at 9:34 of the fourth quarter on the replay of the national championship game, you'll see a really good-looking ball head guy on press row on the end as NYU is taking the ball out of bounds. So don't forget that. So
there you
he's there.
go.
Coach and everybody, thank you so much, and we look forward to having you again really soon. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be back anytime.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Coach.
Coach.
Thanks, Coach.